What's up, everyone? Welcome to today's video. Welcome to the Video Game Fight School channel. Thank you very much for tuning in. So my favorite superhero game of 2022, Gotham Knights, is supposedly, or I guess confirmed, to be coming to Game Pass next month. Now, this is quite exciting news for me because I think it has opened the door for the conversation, and a lot of people who never got to try Gotham Knights are already saying, yes, now that it's on Game Pass, they're willing to give the game a shot. This is also an opportunity for us to be able to open up the conversation regarding this particular game and see areas where I think the game possibly missed in terms of capturing its audience, and also where the game also missed in regard to how it was perceived based on a lot of what reviewers put out there surrounding this video game. Gotham Knights is a very solid game. It will be surprising for those of you who pick it up for the very first time that maybe about 70% of you will like the game and about 30% of you will probably not like it. It's the trend that we've been seeing in regard to reviews in places like Steam and even on the Xbox, platform where we can actually read reviews. A lot of people have been able to level-headedly, after playing the game, on sale, conclude that the game actually did have a lot of really cool stuff that goes with it. Now, one really interesting part of Gotham Knights that I feel like anybody who wants to actually deal with this game must understand is you cannot play this game with Arkham lenses. You cannot go in there and say, oh, I want to enjoy the Arkham games while playing Gotham Knights. No, the experience is going to basically be very different. And if you go in with that mindset, you'll be setting yourself up for, disappointment, because Gotham Knights is an extremely different game. Yes, it has some little glimmers of what the Arkham games have done, but that's not what it's set out to do overall. I say one thing in this particular game. The one area of this game that I know that we are undefeated in is the combat. Now, a lot of people might say, well, the combat is not as, smooth as call game A, B, C, or D, or the way you see the combat in a game like Marvel Spider-Man or Miles Morales or whatnot is not as good as the Gotham Knights game. I say actually that's a whole bunch of nonsense. The Gotham Knights game is actually very solid in its combat and the way that it actually did set it up. The reason that we're seeing a lot of people say stuff like this is because they, truly and honestly did not invest the time in learning how the combat works. The combat is a very different combat system from many others that you've seen out there. There's a side of easiness to it, and then there's also a learning curve when you actually want to go ahead and, when you want to go ahead and master different aspects of the combat. Also, when you think about the way, the game is designed overall, the combat actually requires a lot more manual drive in a sense. And when I say manual drive, I'm talking about how the game does not hold your hand when you're, playing or when you're actually fighting. You have to control your player very, very intentionally. Like everything your character does is intentional to you. There are a few things that the game will automatically help you fill in. Example will be the timed attacks. And another example is the way your directions are. If you turn your directions to a specific spot, the game is going to require for you to follow through. You run and move across a stage all by yourself. And these are things that the game, is in a sense trying to require from you. Another thing too is the landscape of the way the game is, the way the game's levels are designed. There are layers to it because you have to fight on, all these different tiers and whatever in terms of the way buildings are or abandoned buildings are, which really does reduce the way you can flow across the game. So you have to do a lot of that kind of manually by yourself. And then the way the dodge system works and the way enemy NPCs are, pretty much trying to get you, you would have to use all of the tools in your arsenal to be able to go ahead and leverage, what your character is capable of doing. So I'm looking forward to actually talking about the combat in this game because a lot of the reviewers, they did not do the game's combat justice. I think they were just more interested in going to play some other games at the time that the reviews for this game came out because they did not want to necessarily deal with, what the game would require in terms of learning it. Because the timed attacks are quite interesting. Each different character, Red Hood, Batgirl, Robin, and Nightwing have different timed attack patterns. It's like a musical theme for every single one of them. It's weird at the end of the day because you will see when you start playing it and when you start getting, used to the combat that each and every character requires you to actually master things differently. Another really interesting aspect is paying attention to the gear that a lot of people did not necessarily, in my opinion anyways, seem to understand why it was even in the game. And that's because the way the game is designed, they put in some enemy types and enemy classes that really did require, say, you using all of these different elements that come from your gear, that come from your different weapons, in order for you to be able to confront the enemy types, because the enemy types all came with different weaknesses and different strengths and different immunities. So you now had to have, an arsenal full of their weaknesses and be able to counter all of that they already had been built and programmed with. So I think this is kind of like the very best thing a lot of people have not really tapped into when it comes to Gotham Knights. And that's why those who actually were able to give the game a chance really did enjoy the game overall, because it really did have something to offer in regard to those aspects. Now, in regard to the combat, and here is me playing as Robin, you really have to understand that all of what I'm doing is not necessarily something that you can put together in day one. You would have to actually take your time to be able to understand the way the game works and the way your character works. Also, a few things are going to be somewhat flashy, like, the way my character is able to take on multiple enemies and do some really cool stuff. You would have to unlock a lot of your abilities. Those abilities are there to help you to be able to confront enemies in combat, and you will face different kinds of enemies that will continue to, basically challenge you. But at the end of the day, one thing that you can be sure of is that once you're able to get your characters, power levels up in terms of getting all of their abilities unlocked, or most of their abilities unlocked, and getting really cool gear, you'll find out that enemy NPCs are just going to all bend to your will. You'll be able to clear them out without any ease, because there is a skill curve, there is a knowledge curve as well that goes into it. And there's also a tactile curve. The game almost works like a fighting game. This is why I think a lot of people were not too interested, because again, when you actually, pit it against, say, a game like the Arkham games, a lot of people just really wanted the simplicity of the Arkham games, or the simplicity of games like the Spider-Man games. Also, in terms of aesthetics and in terms of look, the Arkham games do have this really deep feel to them that, the Gotham Knights game seems to, in a sense, lack. But I think that's a matter of, level design, preference, and choice. I think the team at, Warner Bros. Montreal could have basically picked up their files from Rocksteady that they used and the assets, and built from there to get a representation of, the Arkham or Gotham that they found similar. But they decided to go with like a Joe Schumacher type of Gotham, like he did in the Batman 98 series. So don't let that throw you off. See it as something that is just a design choice more than anything else, because I think that's going to open your eyes to, the way that they decided that they were going to design and, go with their game. But nonetheless, I'm really looking forward to actually talking a little bit more about Gotham Knights. I think it's just one of the more underrated games out there, because, again, when you think about the way mainstream reviewers have actually been with these video games these last few days, you get to see that, you can only take a review for as much as, the salt that you can find in your kitchen, or at least the lowest amount of salt you can find in your kitchen. That's basically what I would say, so a big, huge, massive grain of salt, possibly, because at the end of the day, you may prefer these games. And, if you think about it all, the game preferences are all, dependent on you. And to be honest, if you watch a lot of these reviewers, you're going to see that many of them lied about the combat in Gotham Knights. I have videos to that effect. I might link them in the description. If anyone's interested, ask me if I don't link it. But it is one of those things that we must highlight and talk about, because I think many reviewers misled, a lot of gamers with this particular game. And, it'll be interesting to see how those who try it on Gamepass are going to vibe with the game overall. So thanks so much for watching. I appreciate you guys' time and audience. Hopefully we'll talk pretty soon about, more superhero games. Spider-Man is coming even at the same month that Gotham Knights is going to Game Pass. So I guess maybe if somebody doesn't want to, spend the money on Spider-Man, say you have an Xbox or you have a PC and you don't want to deal with Spider-Man 2 yet and you haven't tried Gotham Knights, it probably gives you a really cool incentive to be able to say, okay, I can play another try out another superhero game for maybe a free, subscription, or maybe like a little subscription, and so on and so forth. All right, I'll get out of your hair. Thanks so much for watching. Appreciate you all so much. Peace out.